Hello, this is Dr. Janice Love, and thank you for visiting my YouTube channel. Today, we are going to have a conversation about cracking the code and having a inclusive culture and climate. We will be joined by Dr. Ralita Cheeks, who will share her story, her strategies, and some real solutions, not only to help you survive, but thrive in places where we show up in. So, whether that's at work, in the classroom, or even in church, we are going to hear from Dr. Relita Cheeks. So, stay tuned. Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Janice Love, and we are here for another episode of Asking for a Sister Friend, where we create space for real conversations that heal, uplift, and empower. So, how's everybody doing? Welcome. It is Sunday, and again, time for another episode of Asking for a Sister Friend. As you're coming in, say hello and let me know that you are there. And by all means, make sure you leave comments, or if you have questions for our guests, feel free to leave those questions. So, in honor of Employee Appreciation Month, today we're diving into a much needed conversation on culture and climate and how respect, yes, simple respect, has the power to unlock our best selves. Now, let's be real, okay? We're living in a time where the conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are being silenced and even eliminated in some spaces. In fact, I saw a list of words that were supposed to be eliminated from government. But my guest today, she's not backing down. In fact, she's cracking the code. So I am going to tell you a little bit about our guest today because in a world where culture shapes everything, Dr. Relita Cheeks is helping us to crack that code on what it truly means to create spaces where people feel seen, respected, and empowered to thrive. With a background in both mental health and education, Dr. Cheeks has spent over a decade serving students and supporting schools in building climates that bring out the best in everyone, from the classroom to the boardroom. She holds a doctorate in educational leadership from Kansas State University. She's a licensed school counselor and is certified in social justice education and suicide prevention training. Now, as the author of the soon to be released book, Cracking the Code, Building Inclusive Culture and Climate, Dr. Cheeks is equipping leaders with the tools to create environments where people just don't show up, they thrive. So I am honored to be joined by Dr. Relita Cheeks. And before we even get into this, I just have to ask you the question, why are you doing what you're doing?
Hi, well, thank you for having me. The why am I doing what I am doing? I have to tell you, I have a passion for children. I love students and just how they are so curious and what they bring to the table and the energy. And one thing that I have recognized in working with children is that these babies are individuals, and these individuals are just like our students or just like our teachers and our educators. And what
Mhm.
is happening is hey, these educators, they have jobs outside of this building. And so where it is, I have this passion where I really want to make things better for our students. I'm recognizing to make things better for our students, we have got to make things better for each other. And so the why of everything that I'm doing, whether it is writing a book or whether it's interacting with people, it's because we matter.
All right, I love it. Now, are working in the education system, and I personally happen to know and have met your beautiful children. And it's like you're paving the way for them to have the future that you hope and pray that they would have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be raising 5 young girls.
I love it. I
and a
love it.
young man. And it is something that is, you can't even say that pride is something that it is. It is something that it's all of you, and you pour everything you have into it. And what I know with young people is the very thing that you want to teach them is
Mhm.
the very thing of just who you are. And so if you just be your authentic self, that's what they're going to learn. That's what they're going to pick up. So if your
Yeah.
authentic self is going to cuss them out, honey,
I,
listen,
I,
that is
I
what they
love
will
it.
pick up. But
You're
just be who
exactly
you
right.
are. And that's how you develop these young people.
I love it. I love it. And I didn't mention she's actually a minister's wife as well. We know this is Ministers' Wives and Pastors' Wives Appreciation Month. So happy Appreciation Month to you.
And to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's talk about this book that you have written. Now, it's going to be released pretty soon, I understand. But tell me what led you to write this book in the first place.
What led me to, so if we're just going to be real with it,
Mhm. We
there is
are.
a lot of misconception of
Okay.
what DEIB is. You hear
Okay.
it and people shut down.
Hmm.
When I go to speak about DEIB, I speak about it in its authentic self. And so that whole title of cracking the code, I talk about what diversity is. I talk about what equity is. I talk about inclusion, but when I talk about it in my book, I talk about authentic inclusion because there is a difference.
Yes.
And then I start to talk about that sense of belonging. And so in writing cracking the code, it first started off with me just presenting and talking to people, trying to make sure we understood what these terminology words and phrases and hot topic buzzwords,
Hmm.
what they actually meant and how it applied to us. Because we like to talk about it, but then we're like, but where's the action behind that? How is that applicable to me? When I would
Hmm.
go into different organizations or even school districts, sometimes I would hear principals say, or administrators, they would say, well, we don't have a lot of diversity in our school. And as they keep talking, they'd say, they're all, maybe they'd say farm kids, and then they say, and, our teachers, they're all middle aged white women. There's no diversity. And it would be in that moment, I'd be like, oh, wait, do you understand what diversity is? Because diversity is more than race and ethnicity. Diversity can be socioeconomic, it can be
Hmm.
social emotional. There's a lot of things that fall under diversity. So when you ask that question of, what brought me to this and why did we write this, it's very simple is because we do live in a diverse world. And one thing we all know is we can't pour from an empty cup. But
True.
yet we're asking educators to do it every day. We're asking our students to do it every day. Every day they may have something going on. They may not know where their next meal is coming from, but you want them to come and sit down in that classroom and don't be a disturbance. Hey, I know you might not have eaten yesterday, but listen, we're here to learn. Are we? No, you're here to learn. I'm here to stay warm. I'm here because there's electricity here, running water. I don't have that at home. I was given a presentation one time and we were talking about socioeconomics and we were talking about, and I posed the question, we're all here as educators today, but some of us were raised in poverty. And an
Hmm.
educator shouted out, and it was a big room. I couldn't see who it was. They shouted out, some of us are still living in it. I was like, oh my gosh,
Wow.
right? Right? And even I got caught
Wow.
in that. Here I am to present, and I'm like, wait, I'm doing some of the same things that we do where we think, hey, we're all in here together. But reality is I don't know what you came from. I don't know where you're going back to.
Wow. So as you think about the mistakes that America's making, that they're making in organizations, what would you say is the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to having an inclusive space?
Oh, I think the biggest one is that we are assuming everybody wants to have an inclusive space.
Ooh. Talk a little bit about that. I want to hear about this. Come on.
I
Come on with it.
mean, so you have organizations and even school districts that say, hey, we want to be more inclusive. I
Hmm.
just wonder, who is we? because
Mm.
I can't speak for every demographic, but I can speak from the demographic that I do come from. And I can tell you, everybody does not want to be around me. Maybe it is
Okay.
because of my race. Maybe it's because of my gender. Maybe it's because of my religious beliefs.
Hmm.
So when we're saying we want to be an inclusive environment, my question is, who's the we? And just because we've got the top that is saying, hey, we're going to do all of this, the question is the people who are, for lack of a better term, just like in the streets, the people that are actually
Hmm.
doing the work, is that their goal? Do they value that? Is that what they want to do? Is it being done with fidelity?
Mm.
Because my question or my response would be is, how do we know that it is? What measures have we taken? Because I've talked to students, and students will tell you, no, this teacher is doing this or this teacher is doing that. Or, maybe they'll see something within the community and they're like, this adult is doing this and this adult is doing that. And one thing I find about these kids is they're telling their truth. Notice I said their truth,
Hmm. Right.
because there has been times where people are saying, oh, well, you're this or you're that, and you treat me just like this person. Well, see, that was the truth, is they may treat you just like this person, and this person may kind of have maybe these beliefs and these values. And because now this educator or this adult has treated you the same way, that student now feels like, hey, you're the same way. Well, they are children. They're
Yes.
associating that way.
Hmm.
Right? So we have to teach them that, yes, some people are believing this way. Some people have not recognized that what they're doing to you is causing harm or trauma to you. But if we can have these conversations, right, and bring our whole self to say, hey, when you do this, this is how I feel. How can we move past it? Right?
Okay.
But we have to teach these things. And the reality is we're not teaching how to have the difficult conversations.
When you think about, you talked about how is it being measured? How do we even measure whether or not we're being effective from a DEIB perspective?
So, DEIB, right? So there's that
Hmm.
piece of that equity.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
in the book, I
Okay.
talk about there being a difference between equity and equality.
Hmm.
And so when I go to speak about equity, I love it when an organization or a group will tell me, we want to be equitable. I love that. Because what you told me is you are willing to put time and money behind this.
All right. All
That is
right.
how we can be equitable. We have to measure. So you're going to have to do surveys. You're going to have to constantly and consistently look
Hmm.
at what are we doing, and is this still equitable? Is this still doing what we set out to do?
Okay.
Um, so I'm a school counselor. I told you that.
Okay.
And we were getting together with another school that was across town,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
had brought in all the high school counselors, and we all like each other, but we don't always get along because we don't want to do things their way, they don't want to do things like our way, and it's
Okay.
fine, the respect is there. So they bring us
Hmm.
all in, and it was just a local college, and they're just like, hey, we want to give a scholarship to one of your students. All you have to do is come and listen to us, and we're going to set it up so that one of your kids is going to win $1,000. Of course, we're all going. So we all show up.
Everybody.
So we're there, we're listening, and it is great. They said they want to give $1,000 scholarship to both schools for one
Okay.
student just
Hmm.
for coming to a meeting that they want to have at the school. And just by attending, their name is put in the bucket to win. It's not attached to a GPA. It's not attached to, the class favorite or whatever. It's completely random. This is wonderful. We want to do it.
Hmm.
So as we're meeting and stuff, we're like, okay, so what else could we do? And somebody was like, well, if we could get on your college campus, then maybe we could get more kids. Oh, yes, we want that, because as counselors, we know we've got to have kids on campus. That's how kids go to the next level. And so we're all talking and things are going great. And they're just like, well, if we have it a little later in the day, then parents can come. Yes, we want that too, because we understand you have to get the parents there too,
Right. Right.
because it is supportive. And so we are going back and forth, and everybody is saying yes and yes. And I have to tell you, I was sitting there like, girl, this is great. And then in that moment, I said, Ralita, you have never gotten along like this. What is going on? I'm like, girl, I don't know what to tell you, but this is awesome. They're talking about giving kids money. Girl, this is great. I said, honey, something ain't right. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, okay, take a step back. So it was in that moment that I kind of stepped back, and now I'm just watching the room. And I said, am I missing something? And I was like, I don't think so. And as I'm looking, I said, Ralita, are you being equitable? I'm like, absolutely. In my
All
book, I
right.
talk about the asking the question.
Okay, so
You
we're
want to
going
be,
to we're going to take a
oh,
station break here. And then when we come back, we really want to dive into some of the things that you talk about in your book. So we're going to take a quick station break. It's going to be about a minute. And then we're going to come back and talk about what you're doing in your book. In fact, I got so excited, you all, about talking with Dr. Cheeks that I didn't even tell you what we were talking about. We're talking about the culture cure, how respect unlocks our best selves. And she's going to be talking a little bit about that when we come back. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you helping others to achieve their goals? An aspiring author, or you're already an author? Do you have a wealth of knowledge stuck in your head and you're ready to teach what you know? Whether you're creating an ebook, an online course, or other learning materials, you're probably thinking to yourself, where do I start? So, are you ready to turn your knowledge into impact and monetize your content? With a course building technology learning management system for experts, you can have stress-free tech. Hi there. I'm Dr. Janice Love, the founder and the CEO of Pearls Perfected Institute, where we help you to turn your knowledge into impact. And we guide you every step of the way, and that's worth celebrating. Visit us at pearlsperfectedinstitute.com. Again, pearlsperfectedinstitute.com.
All right. So we are back here with Dr. Relita Cheeks, and we are talking about the culture cure, how respect unlocks our best selves. Now, she has written a book, and I'm so excited. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. And when is the release date?
April 4th.
April 4th. Okay, and in a little bit, I'm gonna have the link up there. I'm gonna try to put the link up there so that we can um, actually show people where they can purchase the book. All right, so let's talk about this book. You are cracking the code on how to have that inclusive, that place where culture is respected. So tell us a little bit about how we crack that code without giving away all the goods. All right.
Well, so if I were to finish what I was saying about that story, that's gonna
Okay.
be the same way. Is
Bring it
so
on.
equity asked that question
Hmm.
of who is trying to get in the room and can't. And each one of these words, they ask a question. And
Hmm.
equity is that one of who is trying to get into the room and can't. So I told you that whole story, and I thought I was being so equitable, but in that moment when I took a step back, who was trying to get in the room and can't? And here's what
Hmm.
happened. We started off doing something that was for students. We wanted
Hmm.
students to get scholarships, but there was a couple of things that I said in there. They couldn't get in the room. One, I said, hey, this scholarship's supposed to be for everybody, no matter the demographic.
Hmm.
We moved the location for the meeting. Guess what? Does everybody have access to get to that college now? No. We changed the time. Hey, what do students do when they go home? Some of them are parents themselves. Some of them have to work, take care of parents, take care of siblings.
Siblings. Hmm.
Once we moved the location, the very thing that we set out to do, we took it away. So each one of these, ask a question, and you have to keep them in mind when you are trying to best execute it. If you want to be diverse, okay, well, then here's the question you have to ask yourself. When you want to be equitable, ask yourself, hey, who's trying to get in this room and can't? And after you do it ever so often, you got to go back to it. The best thing that I can tell you about being equitable is a curb cutout. Do you know what that is?
No.
So it is actually the cutout in a curb that you see at like a crosswalk.
Yes.
And if you had children, I bet you used a stroller and you used to just walk right up that curve cutout. If you're a runner, you use it just to kind of run. If you're getting a little seasoned in age, rather than lifting your feet up these 2 to 3 inches, hey, you just walk up that curb cutout. Here's the thing. The curb cutout was not designed for any of us. It was
Okay. Help me.
actually designed for a handicapped community, right?
And for the blind, so the ones that we have in our neighborhood, they have the stand
The
up
braille.
things where, yeah, the braille kind of thing that lets people know they're coming to a curb. So talk a little bit more about this. I'm interested in it.
But that's how you know when something's equitable. Everybody's benefiting from it. When you go back, then you say, hey, are this group of people, whoever we designed this for, are they still benefiting from it? And if the answer is yes, honey, you've got something equitable right there, because they now have access to whatever it was that you were trying to give them. So if you want to be equitable, it's not a one and done, hey, we did this. No, you
Mm-hmm.
have got to constantly and consistently go back and check it. And so that's why you have to have the surveys. That's why you have to have the data, because we have to be able to measure. So when you're asking these things, this is what equity looks like. This is
Okay.
why we need the cracking the code, is because each one of these things poses a question. And hey, are we doing it?
You've written this. You taught them how to do it. So is this something that you are going to be teaching organizations? You're going to be encouraging them to follow some of the things that you suggest? What are you going to do with all this?
Yes. So I do go into different districts when I'm invited. I
Hmm.
go into
Right.
organizations and I speak, I work with. We have to start with just, I don't want to say a rubric, but that's really what it is. And we're analyzing, hey, where are we? Where do we think we are? Where do we
Hmm.
actually see ourselves and how do we get there? And so it's these moments of stopping and really asking the questions to see and to measure, where are we? How do we get there? Who's involved? But just because you want to be there doesn't mean you're there. I notice
Right.
everybody wants belonging. Everybody wants it. And that's
Hmm.
awesome. I think that's great, right? But in the book, I pose it as diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are the tools to get there. We have to
Hmm.
accept diversity, take part in equitable measures, make sure that we are being authentically inclusive. And that is how we get to belonging.
Well, when we think about what's going on in this current climate, it's like DEIB is more like a four-letter word now, right? So how do we continue to talk about this without getting shut down just because we use the words diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? How do we keep the conversation alive when the government wants to delete those words?
You get the book. The book also has resources. um, yeah, so it's the questions that the book poses and challenges you to ask. It's the stories within it where you can recognize, like, oh wait, I'm not like everybody else. No two people are the same. We have a lot of similarities, absolutely, but we do have a different background. And it is that those differences that make us amazing, but they're also the things that we have got to bring to the table and feel comfortable to talk about, so that we can create a little space for the next person and create a little space for ourselves. But we can't create that space if we don't start talking about it.
Right. And so how do we even protect this work? Because organizations are, we've seen everything going out about organizations who are getting rid of their DEI policies. They're getting rid of anything that again sounds like that. So how do we continue to protect this work? Do we need to come up with new terms? Do we need what is it that we need to do in order to protect this work? Because it sounds like the government wants to shut it down so that they don't have to do any of those things. They don't have to practice diversity or inclusion or even respect for that matter.
Mm-hmm. That's why you make sure you pre-order the book too. Just saying, secure your book, okay?
Right.
But so yes, the question has been posed, and honestly, when I talk to different organizations, that's exactly what they've done. Is they've changed the lingo, they've changed the words. But I also have to tell you too is that I have been in rooms with people who have heard negative things about DEIB and were really there to be critical about it. But once they hear how I speak about it, they recognize, wait.
Right.
We need this. We don't want to get rid of this. Because when you recognize that you have a belonging issue within your school, within your organization, within your churches, within your communities, you recognize this when you say, hey, why is it people aren't showing up? I'd say this then. Why do you think youth reach an age where they don't want to be at the house and they want to be around their friends? It's the same answer. Is they feel accepted. They can be their authentic self around their friends. They don't feel like anybody's judging them, right? Our educators, our pastors, our community workers, our people within our organization, they feel the same way. They want to go do their job. They want to go home. They don't want to be there because can they be their authentic self? And when the answer is no, they don't show.
Wow. You have given a lot of good information and some things that really cause us to really think about this. Because for years, I came up around a time where diversity was just making sure that there was a class on campus during orientation or something, that you took the diversity class, right? Equity and inclusion and belonging are words that weren't even talked about when I first got into the workforce. So I appreciate the fact that because we are so diverse in this country, because we are in so many spaces where that are divided, or that or we often are more drawn to places again like you talked about where we belong, and so we didn't always think about this kind of thing. So this was a shift for me, even when the term DEI and B came up. And I think what happens is people get confused and they put a label on it. Those who have a problem with it put a label on it that of something that makes them feel uncomfortable, whether it's the gender expression, or whether it's handicap, whether it's black, whether it's whatever. And that has been the problem. So again, I hope everybody is willing to get her book and take a look at it and be willing to have those conversations. So what can we do even in our churches to have conversations around DEI and B?
So again, I think you just have to start with the very basic is where are we what are we trying to find the answer to, or where are we trying to be more inclusive? Are we trying to focus on diversity, like really zero in if we're talking DEIB, what is it that we are trying to get out of this? And like I said, because each one holds its own weight, we have to start with them individually. So if you're trying to be more inclusive, then I love that one. In what ways? And are you ready to do the work to be more inclusive? Because there is some work, and it's examining and self-awareness of self too. We got to start inward before we start working outward. And I believe my Jesus said that, hey, remove that plank at your own eye first.
Yeah. So in our final words, before we get out of here, what do you want to share? What's something that you really want our listeners to hear today?
I see you and you matter. I think that is probably the best thing that we can say is we've all felt it at some point where we felt like we might have been the only one. We might have felt like things weren't fair or equitable. We might have felt like, hey, you invited me to this table, you invited me to this meeting, but you really didn't want to hear from me. And we might have felt like we don't belong there. I just need to go in here, do what I got to do so that I can get back home. But you matter, and you have a voice. And you know what? They didn't like my Jesus neither.
Amen.
and, and you too, honey, are going to be just fine because you do belong.
I love it. I love it. You have dropped so many nuggets here today. In fact, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this myself again so I can pick up some of those nuggets that you dropped because you have such a wonderful grasp of DEI and B, and you define it in such a way that people understand it. And that means so much. So as we are out and about, and if we feel like we are what I would call being not included, or we feel like we don't belong, remember that Dr. Ralita Cheeks says that you matter. And again, especially as Black women, we experience that every day. We literally experience that every day. So keep your head high. Then also order this book. And again, always remember that you matter. So we have been here again talking with Dr. Ralita Cheeks, and we have been talking about again her upcoming book, which talks about cracking that code. And we have also talked a little bit about the culture code, how respect unlocks your best self. So thank you so much again for being my guest today. I love you and appreciate you. We just met this year, and you are definitely my sister friend, and I just love it. And tell them babies I said hello.